I saw my winter coat draped over her chair the morning I came home early, and my stomach dropped before my mind could catch up. It was the cream cashmere one with the silk lining, the one I'd saved 3 months of coffee shop wages to buy when I was 19. The one that fit me perfectly, that made me feel like I had my life together even when I didn't. The one I'd worn on my first real job interview, on the day I signed my apartment lease, on every important moment when I needed to feel like myself. She was standing in front of her mirror, my sister Victoria, trying it on like it was hers. "Helena," she said when she noticed me in the doorway. Not startled, not guilty, just mildly annoyed at the interruption. "I'm borrowing this for the weekend. David's taking me to that restaurant upstate. The nice one." David. My boyfriend David. The one I'd been dating for 2 years. The one who'd been distant lately. The one who'd cancelled our anniversary dinner last week because of work. "That's my coat," I said. My voice came out smaller than I wanted. "I know. I'll bring it back Monday." She adjusted the collar, turning to examine herself from another angle. "It looks better on me anyway. You never wear nice things, right?" I should have said no. I should have walked over and taken it off her shoulders. I should have told her about the restaurant reservation I'd found on David's phone, the one that matched her weekend plans exactly. But I didn't. I stood there and watched her check her reflection one more time before she breezed past me, trailing my perfume and my suspicions, and I said nothing. That was Friday. On Monday, she came back without it. "I lost it," she said over breakfast, spooning yogurt into her mouth like she was discussing the weather. "It fell off somewhere. I don't remember where." My mother looked up from her newspaper. "Victoria, that was Helena's good coat." "She has others," Victoria shrugged. "Besides, it was just a coat." My father didn't even look up from his phone. I felt something crack inside my chest, small and quiet, like ice breaking under weight you can't see. "Where did you lose it?" I asked. "I don't know. Maybe at the restaurant, maybe in David's car. Does it matter?" She stood up, already bored with the conversation. "I said I'll buy you another one eventually." Eventually. The word hung in the air like smoke. I didn't tell her I knew about David. I didn't tell her I'd seen the photos on his Instagram from the weekend, the ones where she was wearing my coat in every shot, laughing at a table I'd wanted to sit at, living a moment that should have been mine. I didn't tell anyone. I went to work. I came home. I smiled when I was supposed to. I let them talk about how beautiful Victoria looked in the photos, how lucky she was to have found someone like David, how they made such a perfect couple. 3 months later, they announced their engagement at the Sunday dinner. My mother cried with joy. My father opened expensive wine. Victoria showed off a ring that caught the light like a promise. David wouldn't look at me. I excused myself to the bathroom and stared at my reflection until my face stopped feeling like mine. Then I went back to the table and ate my food and pretended my heart wasn't bleeding out in my chest. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the coat, about how I'd worked those long shifts to afford it, how I'd waited for it to go on sale, how I'd felt when I first put it on and saw myself transformed into someone who mattered. And I thought about how easily she'd taken it, how casually she'd lost it, how little it had meant to her while it meant everything to me. I thought about how I'd let her. The weeks after the engagement were a performance I perfected through repetition. Smile at the wedding planning talk, compliment Victoria's dress choices, ignore the way David's eyes would find me across rooms, and then dart away like he'd touched something burning. I became very good at disappearing. I picked up extra shifts at the coffee shop. I stayed late organising inventory that didn't need organising. I took the long way home and walked until my feet ached and my thoughts went quiet. My parents never asked where I was. Victoria never noticed I was gone. One evening in November, I was closing the shop alone when David came in. The bell above the door made the same cheerful sound it always did, indifferent to the way my hands froze on the espresso machine. "We're closed," I said without turning round. "I know, I saw you through the window." His footsteps were soft on the tile. "Helena, we need to talk." "No, we don't." "I'm sorry." I finally turned to face him. He looked tired. "Good." "For which part? Dating my sister while you were with me? Proposing to her? Or coming here to make yourself feel better about it?" He flinched. "It just happened. We didn't plan." "Don't." The word came out sharp enough to cut. "Don't tell me it just happened. You made choices. Both of you. Own them." "You're right." He ran a hand through his hair, the gesture so familiar it hurt. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am. I looked at him and felt nothing. Not love, not hate, just a vast, empty space where something used to be. "The coat Victoria borrowed from me," I said. "The one she lost. Do you remember it?" He blinked, confused by the change in subject. Yeah. The cream one?" "Did you ever think about how I saved for 3 months to buy it? How proud I was of it? How careful I was with it, because it was the first really nice thing I'd ever owned. Helena, she wore it on your first date, the one that should have been our anniversary dinner. She looked beautiful in it in all those photos, and then she lost it somewhere, and she didn't even care enough to remember where." David's face went pale. "That's who you chose," I said quietly. "Someone who takes things that matter and loses them without a second thought. I hope that works out for you." He left without another word. I locked the door behind him and finished closing the shop in perfect silence. Winter deepened. The wedding planning accelerated. I moved through my life like a ghost haunting familiar rooms. My parents hosted a celebration dinner for Victoria's bridal shower. The house filled with relatives and friends, everyone bringing gifts and well wishes and questions about my love life that I deflected with practiced ease. I helped serve the food, I refilled drinks, I smiled until my face ached. Victoria held court in the living room, radiant in a white dress she'd bought for the occasion, describing her wedding vision with the kind of passionate detail she'd never applied to anything that mattered to anyone but herself. "And Helena will be a bridesmaid, of course," she announced, gesturing toward me with her champagne glass. "Even though she's being weird and distant lately. But she'll come around. She always does." Everyone laughed like she'd made a joke. I felt myself split in two. One version stayed in the room, nodding and smiling. The other version walked out the door and kept walking until there was nothing behind her but distance. That night, I stood on my apartment balcony, in the freezing air, without a coat, and thought about endings. I thought about how tired I was, how empty, how much of myself I'd given away to people who never noticed I was disappearing. I thought about the coat, always the coat, how something so simple had become a symbol of everything I'd lost. The cold seeped into my bones and I let it. I don't remember going inside. I don't remember lying down. I remember thinking that sleep would be a relief, and then I remember nothing at all. I woke up screaming, not from pain, from shock, from the impossible, disorienting reality of opening my eyes and seeing my childhood bedroom ceiling, the one with the water stain shaped like a bird that I used to stare at before school. I sat up so fast the room spun. My hands were younger, smoother. The scar on my left wrist from the coffee shop burn was gone. My phone on the nightstand was my old phone, the one I'd replaced 4 years ago. I grabbed it with shaking hands. The date glowed up at me like an accusation. 4 years earlier. Before David. Before the engagement. Before the coat. I was 23 again. The knowledge hit me like cold water. I remembered everything. The relationship. The betrayal. The loss. The hollow years of watching them build a life from the ruins of mine. The quiet way I'd faded until there was nothing left but the outline of who I used to be. I remembered dying, or whatever that had been. The ending. And I remembered the coat. I got out of bed on legs that felt strange and familiar at once, and walked to my closet. There it was, hanging in its garment bag, pristine and untouched. The cream cashmere coat with the silk lining. I ran my fingers over the fabric and felt something unlock in my chest. This time would be different. This time I wouldn't disappear. The next few weeks, I moved through the world like I was relearning a language I'd forgotten. Everything was the same, but I was different, and that made all the difference. I knew the rhythms of this time. I knew Victoria would ask to borrow things and never return them. I knew my parents would praise her and overlook me. I knew David would ask me out in 2 weeks at the coffee shop where I worked. But knowing and participating were different things. When Victoria came into my room one morning and started browsing through my closet without asking, I didn't retreat to my bed and pretend to read like I used to. "Can I help you find something?" I asked. She turned, surprised by my tone. "Just looking. You never mind?" I mind now. I stood up and gently but firmly closed my closet door. "If you want to borrow something, ask first, and I need it returned clean and undamaged by the date we agree on." Her eyes widened. Helena didn't set boundaries. Helena didn't push back. "Are you serious right now?" "Completely." She stared at me for a long moment, trying to find the sister she could walk over, and found someone else instead. "Fine," she said finally. "Whatever. I didn't want any of your stuff anyway." She left and I felt a small, quiet victory settle into my bones. At Sunday dinner that week, my mother praised Victoria's new boyfriend, some investment banker named Richard she'd started dating. "He's very successful," my mother said, serving Victoria an extra portion of her favourite dish, without asking if anyone else wanted more. "You've done so well for yourself, sweetheart." Victoria preened under the attention. "He's taking me to that new restaurant upstate next weekend, the really exclusive one." I knew this story. I knew how it played out. In my first life, I'd offered to lend her my coat for the occasion because she'd complained about not having anything nice enough. She'd taken it and lost it and never apologised properly. "That sounds lovely," I said neutrally. Victoria waited for me to offer, to play my part in our familiar dynamic. When I didn't, confusion flickered across her face. "I need something really nice to wear," she said pointedly. "Something elegant." "I'm sure you'll find something perfect," I said, and took another bite of food. The silence stretched. My mother glanced between us, sensing something shifted, but not understanding what. "Helena has that beautiful cream coat," my mother said finally. "The one you saved up for, remember? Victoria, that would be perfect for a nice restaurant." "It would," Victoria agreed immediately, turning to me with expectant eyes. I met her gaze calmly. "It would, but I'm not lending it out." "Don't be selfish," my father said without looking up from his phone. Something old and hot flared in my chest, but I kept my voice level. "It's not selfish to keep my belongings. Victoria can buy her own coat." "It's just a coat," Victoria said, her voice taking on a whining edge. "You never even wear it anywhere important." "That's because it's important to me. That's why I take care of it." I set down my fork. The answer is no. The dinner continued in uncomfortable silence. I'd broken the unspoken rule. Helena gives Victoria what Victoria wants. Helena doesn't make trouble. Helena disappears into the background while Victoria shines. But I wasn't that Helena anymore. 2 weeks later, David came into the coffee shop. I knew what was coming. This was the day he'd ask for my number. The day I'd say yes, flattered that someone noticed me, and begin the slow descent into a relationship that would hollow me out from the inside. He ordered a black coffee and smiled at me while I made it. "You're Helena, right? Victoria's sister?" "That's right." I handed him his coffee, not smiling back. "I'm David. I've seen you at some family things. You're different from her." In my old life, I'd taken that as a compliment. Different meant special. Different meant he saw me. Now I understood. Different meant easier. Different meant less work. Different meant a woman who wouldn't demand much because she was already used to getting nothing. I am, I agreed. He leaned against the counter. Listen, I know this is forward, but would you want to get dinner sometime? There's this great place upstate. No. Thank you, I said politely. He blinked. Oh. Okay. Can I ask why? You're not my type. You don't even know me. I know enough. I moved to help the next customer, dismissing him with my attention. He left looking confused and slightly offended. Good. I worked the rest of my shift in a calm that felt like power. That evening, Victoria called me. David asked you out? Her voice was sharp with something I couldn't quite name. Not jealousy, exactly. More like territorial aggression. He did. I said no. Why? Because I didn't want to. I kept folding laundry while we talked, the mundane task grounding me. Why do you care? I don't. I just think it's weird. He's a catch. Most girls would be thrilled. Then most girls can date him. She was silent for a moment. You're being really strange lately. I'm being myself. Well, I don't like it. That's not really my problem, Victoria. I hung up before she could respond and felt another piece of my old life fall away. The months passed differently this time. I picked up photography as a hobby, something I'd always wanted to try, but never made time for in my first life. I took weekend trips alone to places I'd never been. I read books I'd been meaning to read. I said no to family dinners when I didn't feel like going, and stopped apologising for having boundaries. My parents were baffled. Victoria was furious. But I was alive in a way I hadn't been before. I knew Victoria and David would eventually find each other. Some things were probably inevitable, pulled together by mutual selfishness and shallow attraction. But this time, I wouldn't be the casualty of their beginning. 6 months after I'd rejected him, David started dating Victoria. My mother called to tell me, her voice carefully neutral. I know you turned him down, but Victoria and David are seeing each other now. I hope that's not awkward for you. It's fine, I said honestly. They'll be good together. They would be. 2 people who took without thinking, who expected the world to arrange itself around them, who'd never learnt to see past their own reflections. They'd be perfect together until they weren't. The relationship progressed quickly. Victoria loved the attention. David loved having someone who demanded the spotlight he wanted to bask in. My parents loved having something to brag about at their social gatherings. I loved not being part of it. Thanksgiving came. The family gathered. Victoria brought David, and they announced they were moving in together. Everyone celebrated. I offered my congratulations with genuine indifference. David kept watching me throughout dinner, like he was trying to solve a puzzle that didn't make sense. The girl who'd said no to him was thriving. The sister who'd been invisible was now the most present person in the room, even in her silence. It bothered him, I could see it. After dinner, I found him alone in the kitchen. You're different, he said. I told you I was. I poured myself water, unhurried. Victoria says you've changed, that you're not yourself anymore. Victoria wants me to be who she needs me to be. That's different from who I actually am. He frowned. I don't understand you. You don't need to. When I asked you out, you asked me out because you thought I'd be grateful, I interrupted, because you saw someone quiet and overlooked, and you thought that meant easy, but I'm not interested in being anyone's convenient choice. His face flushed. That's not... It is, and that's fine. You and Victoria make sense. You both want people who will reflect back what you want to see. I set down my glass. I hope you're happy together. I left him standing there and felt nothing but relief. Winter arrived. Victoria announced their engagement 2 weeks before Christmas. Another family dinner, another celebration. Another performance of joy I no longer had to fake my way through. I brought a gift, a beautiful cream cashmere scarf that matched my coat. "This is gorgeous," Victoria said, running her fingers over the soft fabric. "This must have been expensive." "It was. I saved for it." I met her eyes. "Take good care of it." She looked at me strangely, like she was trying to remember something she'd forgotten. Then the moment passed and she moved on to the next gift, the next moment, already halfway to forgetting. That night, my mother pulled me aside. "Are you really okay with all this?" she asked. "Victoria and David?" "I am." "You seem lighter, happier even." "I am happier." She studied my face. "I don't understand. You used to be so quiet, so withdrawn. Now it's like you're here, but separate from all of us." "I am separate from all of you," I said gently. "I always was. I just pretended I wasn't because that's what you all needed." "That's not fair." "Maybe not, but it's true." I squeezed her hand. "I love you, Mum, but I can't shrink myself anymore to make other people comfortable." She looked like she wanted to argue, but something in my expression stopped her. The wedding planning consumed Victoria completely. She enlisted me as a bridesmaid with the assumption that I'd say yes, and for once, her assumption was correct. I agreed because I wanted to see how this story ended when I wasn't bleeding out in the margins of it. The bridal shower came in February. Victoria held it at our parents' house, the same as in my first life. The same relatives came. The same gifts piled up. The same champagne flowed. But I wasn't the same. I didn't serve drinks or fade into the background. I sat with the other bridesmaids and laughed at jokes and existed fully in a space that had tried to erase me before. Victoria, radiant in white, caught my eye across the room and frowned slightly. Something was wrong in her perfect picture, but she couldn't quite identify what. Later, when most guests had left, she cornered me in the kitchen. "You could try to look happier," she said. "This is my day." "You've had plenty of days," I replied calmly. "I'm allowed to just exist in them without performing for you." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm happy for you, but I'm not going to shrink myself to make your happiness look bigger." She stared at me. "When did you become so selfish?" Around the same time, I realized being selfless was just another word for invisible. "I don't like this version of you." "That's okay," I said. "I do." The wedding was in April. I wore my bridesmaid dress and stood where I was supposed to stand. I smiled in the photos and danced with relatives who asked me when I'd find someone. "When I find someone who deserves me," I answered, and meant it. David got drunk at the reception and sought me out near the end of the night. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened?" he asked, words slightly slurred. "If you'd said yes that day at the coffee shop?" "No. I think about it sometimes." He looked toward the dance floor where Victoria was laughing with her bridesmaids. She's different than I thought she'd be." "She's exactly who she's always been. You just decided she was something else." "And you? Who are you?" "Someone who knows better now." I finished my drink. "Congratulations on your marriage, David. I genuinely hope it gives you everything you're looking for." I left him there and walked out to the venue's garden. The night was cool. Spring flowers bloomed in careful arrangements. In the distance, music and laughter filtered through the open doors. I stood there in my bridesmaid dress, alone, but not lonely, and felt complete. 2 months after the wedding, I got a promotion at work. Not at the coffee shop. I'd left that job and found something better. Something that challenged me and paid well and recognised my worth. I celebrated by buying myself a new coat. Not to replace the cream cashmere one. That one still hung in my closet, pristine and cherished. This one was different. Deep forest green, beautifully tailored, lined with silk, the colour of winter mornings. I wore it to Sunday dinner the next week. Victoria noticed immediately. "That's gorgeous. Where did you get it?" "I bought it for myself." Must be nice, having money to spend on clothes. It is nice. I worked hard for it. She reached out to touch the fabric and I stepped back smoothly. Don't, I said. I was just looking. Look with your eyes, not your hands. My mother frowned. Helena, don't be rude to your sister. I'm not being rude. I'm being clear. I sat down at the table. My things are mine. If Victoria wants something nice, she can get it herself. The meal was tense, but I ate every bite and tasted all of it. Afterward, when I was leaving, my father stopped me at the door. You've changed, he said. It wasn't a compliment. I have. Your mother and sister think you're angry at them. I'm not angry. I'm just done accommodating everyone else at my own expense. He studied me. You used to be such an easy child. Easy isn't the same as happy, Dad. I pulled on my green coat, feeling its weight settle perfectly on my shoulders. I'm happier now. He didn't have a response to that. The months rolled forward. Victoria's marriage started showing cracks by summer. Small complaints at family dinners, comments about David working late or forgetting plans. The shine was wearing off. I didn't offer advice or sympathy. It wasn't my job to manage her disappointment. By fall, she was pregnant. The family celebrated with the same fervour as the engagement, the wedding, every Victoria milestone. I bought a thoughtful baby gift and offered my congratulations. Aren't you jealous? Victoria asked me one evening when we were alone. I have everything, the husband, the baby, the beautiful life. No, I said honestly. Why not? Because you don't have everything I want. You have everything you want. Those aren't the same thing. She frowned. What do you want? Peace, independence, to be valued for who I actually am, to build something that's mine and can't be taken from me. I smiled slightly. I have those things now. That sounds lonely. It's not. I gathered my things to leave. Your life looks perfect from the outside, Victoria, but we both know you're not happy. You haven't been happy since the wedding. Her face went pale. That's not true. Okay, I said gently, not arguing. I hope I'm wrong. Winter came around again. 1 year since my rebirth. 4 years since the first time I lived this day. I was in my apartment, photographing the frost patterns on my window, when my phone rang. Victoria. Can you come over? Her voice was tight. I need to talk to someone. I almost said no, almost protected my peace and my distance. But something in her voice pulled at me. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She lived in a beautiful house now, the one David's family had helped them buy. Everything was tastefully decorated and carefully arranged and utterly joyless. Victoria was sitting in her perfect living room, 6 months pregnant, crying. He's seeing someone else, she said. I found messages on his phone. I sat down beside her. I'm sorry. We just got married. I'm pregnant. How could he do this? Because he's selfish, I said simply. Because he takes what he wants and doesn't think about consequences. Because he never learned to see past himself. She looked at me with red eyes. You knew, didn't you? When he asked you out, you saw exactly who he was, and you said no. Yes? Why didn't you warn me? Would you have listened? She was quiet for a long moment. No, probably not. We sat there in her beautiful empty house while she cried. I didn't offer solutions or false comfort. I just sat with her while she felt the weight of choices she'd made. I remember now, she said finally. The coat, your cream coat, in another life or a dream or something. I borrowed it and lost it, and you didn't say anything. You just let me take it. I went very still. And then I married David and you disappeared. You became this ghost at family dinners, barely there. She wiped her eyes. But This time, you're different. You said no to me. You said no to him. You're solid and here and real. Victoria, I don't understand it, but I think in that other version, we broke you, and somehow you got a second chance, and this time you didn't let us. I didn't confirm or deny it. I just held her hand while she cried. When she calmed down, I made her tea and we sat in silence that felt less empty than before. I don't know how to fix this, she said finally. Maybe you can't. Maybe you just have to decide what you're willing to live with and what you're not. I set down my mug. But that's your choice to make, Victoria, not mine. She nodded slowly. I'm sorry for everything, for taking things from you and never seeing it, for not noticing when you were disappearing, for being the favourite and using it like a weapon. I know. Do you forgive me? I thought about it, really thought about it. I'm working on it, but I don't disappear anymore, Victoria. Not for anyone. So, if we're going to have a relationship, it has to be different than before. I want that, she said. To be different, to be better. Then be better. I stood up. Starting with yourself. Stop looking for other people to complete you. Stop taking things that aren't freely given. Stop making yourself small to fit into someone else's life. She looked up at me. Is that what I did? It's what we both did. I just stopped first. I left her there with her choices and her consequences, and her chance to do things differently. The next week, she filed for separation. My parents were devastated. The perfect marriage dissolving before the baby even arrived. The scandal of it. The failure. Victoria moved back home temporarily. I visited sometimes, and we talked in ways we never had before. Real conversations, honest ones, building something that might someday become a genuine relationship instead of a performance of sisterhood. Christmas came. I wore my cream cashmere coat to family dinner for the first time in this new life. Victoria saw it and went very still. That coat, she said softly. The one you wanted to borrow. I touched the lapel, the one I said no to. In that other life, I lost it. I borrowed it and wore it on my date with David and lost it somewhere and never even apologised properly. I remember. I'm sorry. Even though it didn't happen this time, I'm sorry. Thank you. She reached out, then stopped herself, respecting my space. It's beautiful. And it looks perfect on you. I'm glad you kept it safe. Me too. We stood there in our parents' living room, two sisters who'd lived two lives, learning to be real with each other for the first time. The baby came in February. A daughter with Victoria's dark hair and eyes that hadn't decided their colour yet. I visited in the hospital and held my niece and felt something settle in my chest. Not forgiveness, exactly. Not yet. But the beginning of it. I'm going to do better with her, Victoria said, watching me hold the baby. I'm going to teach her to see other people, to value them, to not take things that aren't hers. Good. Will you help me? Will you be in her life? I looked at the baby who yawned and stretched in my arms, innocent of all the complications that came before her. Yes, I said, I will. Spring came again, 2 years since my rebirth. I stood on my apartment balcony in my green coat, watching the city wake up under morning light. I thought about the girl I'd been in my first life, how she'd disappeared piece by piece until there was nothing left, how she'd let people take and never learned to say stop. I thought about the coat she'd worked so hard for and how it had come to symbolise everything she'd lost. And I thought about who I was now, solid, present, real. I heard my phone buzz inside, a text from Victoria asking if I wanted to come to Sunday dinner. Not demanding, not assuming, asking. I smiled and typed back, yes. The cream cashmere coat still hung in my closet, pristine and cherished. I wore it on important days, on days when I needed to remember who I was and who I'd chosen to become. But I didn't need it to feel whole anymore. I'd learnt the lesson it had tried to teach me the first time around. Some things are worth saving, some boundaries are worth maintaining, some versions of yourself are worth fighting for. I went inside and got ready for the day, pulling on the green coat and checking my reflection. The woman looking back at me was solid and certain. She knew her worth. She didn't apologise for taking up space. She didn't shrink to fit into other people's comfort. She was who I'd always been underneath, waiting for permission to exist. I'd given myself that permission, and this time, no one could take it away. I locked my apartment and headed out into the world, wrapped in wool and silk and the quiet knowledge that I'd survived my own disappearing act and come back stronger. The coat Victoria had wanted to borrow hung safe in my closet. The coat she'd lost in another life existed only in memory. But the woman I'd become in choosing differently, in saying no, in remaining visible and present and real, that was mine to keep. And I was never letting go.